Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're talking about an idea that completely flips the script on how we learn. It's called inquiry-based teaching, and it's all about turning students from, passive listeners into active detectives. Let's get right into it.
I mean, we've all been there, right? You're sitting in class, cramming your brain with dates and formulas, just trying to hold on to it all long enough for the exam. And then, poof, it's gone a week later. It's a super common experience, but you gotta ask, is that really learning?
For a long time, this was the way. The teacher stands at the front of the room, the sage on the stage, they call it, and basically pours knowledge into students who are supposed to just soak it all up. It's all about the teacher, all about the content. But what if we decided to flip that model completely on its head?
And that question leads us perfectly into our first section. We are going to do exactly that. Let's rethink the classroom.
Okay, so this is the big idea. Inquiry-based teaching, or IBT, is a total game changer. The whole thing is built on this idea that we don't just get knowledge, we have to build it. So instead of a teacher just handing over facts, this approach gets students to ask their own questions, to investigate, and to literally construct their own understanding of the world. So what does that actually look like? Well, first and foremost, it's student-centered. That means their curiosity is the engine driving everything. It's all fueled by questions, which leads them to explore and investigate. And when you're doing that, you can't help but think critically and work together. This is learning by doing, not just by listening. And check this out. This is the fundamental shift. The teacher's role completely transforms. They go from being the knowledge provider to being more of a guide, a facilitator. And the student? Well, they're no longer just a passive listener. They become an active investigator, a real partner in their own learning.
This whole shift brings us to our next section, which we're calling Learning Like a Detective. Because honestly, in this kind of classroom, that's exactly what students get to be. So how does this detective work? Well, work. A really popular framework is called the 5 E's. It all starts with engage. You gotta spark their curiosity with a great question. Then you let them explore. This is where they get to dig in, gather information, and really investigate. After that, they explain, which is all about making sense of what they found and sharing it. Next up is elaborate. Can they apply this new knowledge somewhere else? And finally, you evaluate, where everyone looks back on the journey and what they learned. It's a full circle of discovery.
Now, here's a really important thing to know. Inquiry isn't some rigid one-size-fits-all method. Nope, it's more like a flexible framework with different levels of support. So for our third section, let's explore the 4 main paths of inquiry.
First up is structured inquiry. You can think of this one as inquiry with training wheels on. The teacher gives the students the question and a clear step-by-step procedure. The student's job is to follow those directions and see what happens. A perfect classic example is a paper airplane experiment. The teacher asks the question, how does wing length affect flight distance? And then hands out instructions on exactly how to build the planes and test them. The students just follow the guide, collect the data, and then figure out what it all means. Okay, path number 2 is guided inquiry. Now, the training wheels are starting to come off. The teacher still provides the big question, but, and this is key, the students get to design their own investigation to find the answer. So picture this. A teacher puts a can of regular soda and a can of diet soda in a tank of water. One floats, one sinks. The teacher just asks, why? From there, it's up to the students. How are they going to figure this out? Do they weigh the cans, check the ingredients? The path they take to the answer is totally up to them. Next, we have open inquiry. And this is where things get really interesting. This is the most student-driven level. The students come up with their own questions, design their own experiments, and figure out their own conclusions. They're in the driver's seat. So maybe a class is studying local wildlife. A student might get curious and ask, I wonder what kind of bird seed the birds in my backyard actually like the most. In an open inquiry model, they get to run with that. They can design a whole experiment with different bird feeders to find the answer. It's basically what real scientists do every day.
And finally, there's a really cool branch of inquiry called problem-based learning, or PBL. This approach is all about tackling messy, complex, real-world problems. So instead of a simple question, students might get a mission. Our local river is polluted, figure out why, and propose a real solution. They have to dive into research, analyze data, and work as a team to come up with a plan that could actually make a difference. It makes learning feel incredibly urgent and important.
All right, now that we've broken down what inquiry is, let's put it right up against the traditional model we talked about at the beginning.
This is where you can really see the difference.
I mean, just look at the showdown. On one side, you've got the traditional, teacher-centered approach, focused on memorizing facts for a standardized test. On the other, you have this student-centered model that's all about discovery, experimentation, and critical thinking. It really comes down to this. Are we just acquiring facts, or are we building real, deep understanding?
And that leads to one of the biggest payoffs of all, retention. Think about it. When you're actively involved in building your own knowledge, when you discover something for yourself, it sticks with you. Information you just memorize for a test, that stuff fades away. But discoveries, you own those forever.
So what does this all add up to? Why does this shift matter so much? Not just in school, but out in the real world. Well, that brings us to our final section, skills for the future.
Because here's the thing, the real goal isn't just to learn about science or history. It's about developing the skills you need for life. We're talking about real critical thinking, genuine problem solving, and a sense of curiosity that doesn't just switch off when the bell rings. It's about building motivated, collaborative people who know how to learn, adapt, and thrive.
And that leaves us with one last thing to think about. If we can all agree that curiosity is the true engine that drives learning, then the real question we have to ask is, who should be in the driver's seat?